Hey guys, what's up? This is Turpitu and I hope you guys are doing okay and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be teaching you how to save and load players' data in your games and projects using something called DataStores As always said, you should definitely check out the previous videos that I've made in the series just in case you find any interesting or you might miss out on something important that you should know. But other than that, I do also want to announce that I've just reached 90 subscribers, and I want to say a big thank you to all of you guys because it's you guys that are doing all this. So I just want to say big thanks, and I appreciate everyone for showing so much love and support to the videos. Every view, every like, comment, everything matters to me. So I just want to say I appreciate it. And keep showing the love, man. And hopefully I can keep showing you guys some more entertaining and informative videos that you guys can learn from. But yeah, hopefully we can reach 100 soon and beyond that, of course. But yeah, other than that, let's get straight into this tutorial. So yeah, so let's cover all of this before we start scripting. So one, why do we even want to why should we learn how to save and load players' data? So the answer is pretty straightforward, but just in case, nobody knows, it's essentially because imagine if you have a game that has no saving or loading when it should. So let's say, for example, an RPG game where you could have like weapons, or you have a level system and you have inventories, or maybe you have a game that's like a mini round game that you can get coins and stuff from. Imagine if you every time you try to join a game, you just lose all of your data. It's not going to be really enjoyable for the player, and they're probably just going to leave a dislike on your game. So that's why you should learn how to create a how to use data store service. I mean, um, but yeah, two, you might not know this actually, to be fair, but there are you could use other people's works. So people have made something called a module that you can simply just take and use to create and to basically create like a data saving system. You could just use other people's systems basically that are pre-made. You could just use that instead. But I personally would suggest that you learn how to create like a small system yourself for now. And then let's say you want to work on a big project, then I suggest looking at those other options. But I think you should have a general understanding on how data store service even works. Because I think that'll make you a better developer, and you can know how the general idea on how it works pretty much. And last of all, what is even data store service? That's probably the most important question that I should answer. So data store service is, as in the name, it's just simply a Roblox service, which you guys should all know what a service is by now. But yeah, it's just a Roblox service that pretty much lets the developer create data stores so they can store players' data in. Yeah, so that's essentially what it is. And the way that it works is, imagine, so a data store service will create something called a data store. And this data store we can create an infinite amount of times. We can just, yeah. So let's just say you got your data store. Think of it like a container or like a jar. And inside this container, you can just put in everyone's data. You can put in player data. You can put in other data as well. But you're probably thinking, how are we gonna acquire that data back? Wouldn't other players get other people's data as well? But no, that's not the case, because essentially a data store is just a dictionary. If you remember what a dictionary is, it's essentially a table that has a key, and then that key is connected to a value pair. So otherwise, yeah, so it's just a key value pair, which is also known as a dictionary. And what we do is we just assign, so each player has a unique identifier on Roblox called a user ID. And what we can essentially do is we just create this data store, which is basically a database now that I think about it. And then we assign that key to the player's user ID, and then we can set the value to be their data. It could be a single piece of data, for example, if a game's really simple. But most of the time, you want it to be set to another table that has their data. So it could be a table or a dictionary. Obviously, I think it should be a dictionary because you can use the labels and stuff essentially. But yeah, so that's essentially how a data store service works. And moving to implementing it, at first I found it really hard, but when I was doing it years ago, I mean, and I came across a lot of issues. So Hence why I do want to make this video, so you don't have to do those, you don't have to go across those issues yourself. But yeah, I think we can now get straight into coding, since we now know pretty much everything we need to know for now. But yeah, so this, I've already got a script like pre-made before the tutorial, and it's basically just handling the leaderboard as it says in the name. And what it does is just creates a leaderboard that has some typical stats that you might find in an RPG game. So level, XP, coins. I'll just show you it as well in game. You can see it's my leaderboard here. My default for level is 1, XP is 0, coin is 0. But I'm going to change the coins to 100 actually, now that I think about it. So if I press play, that should be the value set now. That's my default. Let's say we want it so we can load players data and save players data. So essentially what we're going to do first is we have to first reference the data store service. So to do that, we just create a variable and we just, assign it like any other service pretty much. So we're just going to do game, get service. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Get service and then data store service. And then after that, we're not done just yet. We have to create something called a data store. You've probably heard me mention it before, but as I said, it's just it's like a container where we're going to store the player's data. So we don't use data store service, we use a data store. And this data store can be named anything you want. I'm just going to name it player data store just to be straightforward. And then after that, we're just going to set this variable into, we call the data store service variable. Then we do colon, and then we're going to call the method get data store. And then here we just assign it a name. I'm just going to set it the same as the variable name, but this can be anything you want. But I highly suggest that you just do something that is straightforward. And now we've got our data store, and now we can store everyone's player data inside this data store pretty much. So this is our container. And obviously if we change the name here to 1 or 2 or 3, it's going to create a new container instead. So the previous players, that the data that was in the other containers won't be transferred over, basically, unless you code it to. But yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind. So this is our container, and what we're gonna do now is in this player added event, when the player first joins in, we have to load in the data. So you have to get it, and if there is no data, we're just gonna set a default data table to it, basically. But yeah, and before we actually write it down, let me show you what you could essentially do if you are feeling lazy. So I'm just going to make a variable that is going to have the player data. So I'm going to do new player data equals, and then we're going to get player, we're going to do the data store. So just get that variable in there. Then we're going to do colon, and then we're going to do a method called GetAsync. So GetAsync just essentially just gets the data that is at the key. As you can see here, it's even suggesting to give it a key name, so the string. And if you remember before, I was saying that the key is going to be a unique identifier that's unique to all players. That's going to be the user ID. No two players will have the same user ID, so that's why we're going to use that. So we're going to do getAsync, and then we're just going to put the user ID in there. And then technically, this is like done. But there's an issue. An issue with this is the fact that this getAsync method can sometimes not actually return a value, or it could cause an error instead. So let's say the servers aren't working, it's gonna make an error, and if it creates an error here, the rest of the script's not gonna work. Let's say in the future a player joins that same server, they're not gonna be able to have all this code be run at all because the script's like broken. So to fix that, we have to basically wrap it in something called a protected call. And a protected call, or otherwise known as a pcall, essentially makes it so whatever's running inside the pcall function, it will it'll get an error message, but it's not going to crash the script. And to do that is pretty straightforward. We're just going to do here, I'm just making a new line, or I'll just comment this out so it's just confusing. So what we're going to do here is, let me just write out the layout. So the first variable has to be called, it's going to be our success. So obviously if the function is successful or not, it'll be set to this variable as a boolean. So I'm just going to do local success, and then we want a second variable, and to do that we're just going to do comma, and then we're going to put in our second variable. So since we're going to do GetAsync and we're expecting something to return, we're going to set this to new player data. And then after that, we're going to set both of these two variables into the pcall function by doing pcall. The pcall is protected call. And then we're going to do bracket function. And then we're going to do two brackets there. And then we just press enter. And now this is going to run anything that's in this function. And then it's going to return it. It's going to return the success. And it's going to return whatever we returned in the function pretty much. And yeah, so what we can do here, we can just do return, and I'm just going to copy and paste this from there and remove that as well. And now, essentially, if this was to work like with no errors, success will become true, and new player data will be set to whatever data we got essentially. But yeah, so now that we've done this, now we can be confident whenever we run this, we're not going to have a server where the script is going to be broken because the method didn't work for some reason. And as I said before, the method may not work for a number of reasons, such as the servers are being, dodgy, or maybe the rates has been reached already, because there is a limit to how many times you can load or save a player's data. I believe it's 60 times per minute. It's quite a high limit, but let's say you did reach it, you wouldn't be able to get any more data afterwards, so that could lead to an error as well. And I think there's a few other ways as well, but I can't think of it from the top of my head. But yeah, so that's essentially what you need to do, and this is important, and you should be doing this for every method that you're going to be using that has something to do with data store service. Yeah. So after that, we're just going to handle some logic. It's going to be simple. We're just going to do a few checks. So we're going to check if it's successful, and if the new player data is empty, we're just going to give it a default value. And then we're also going to do another check where if success is not true, we're going to warn the developer that there's an issue. So we're going to do if success, and then we're going to do else. So if success, and then it runs this, and then it goes into else. And then we're going to do something called warn. So I haven't mentioned this in my other tutorials, I'm pretty sure. But essentially warn is the same thing as print, where it's going to put a message in the output. But obviously warn will be a warning instead. There's also another variant called error, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use warn, pardon me. I'm going to use warn because it's going to be obvious to the developer, oh, there's something that's a bit, iffy, it's not right. Because it's going to be a bright orange instead of the typical white that you'll see in the output with the normal print. So we're just going to do warn failed to load, and then we're going to do space, and then we're going to end that string, and we're just going to put in the player's user ID. Or we'll just put in the name so it's more obvious. Data. Yeah, so if it runs this function and it's not successful, it's just going to give a warning to the developer. Otherwise, what we can do here, we're going to make it so new player data, if new player data equals nil, then if you remember before, this is, if we do nil, this basically means null. And if we compare something, so if it equals to null, that means it doesn't exist. And what we want to do is, if it doesn't exist, what we want to set it to a default variable, not a default data table, pretty much. Yeah, so I'm just going to do equals, so set the new player data variable into equals, and then a table. And then this table is going to be a dictionary, so we're going to have some labels in there, or a key, I suppose. And I want it to follow the same as our stats here, so I'm going to do level equals 1. That's going to be our default. Or actually, you know what? I'll make a new function so it's a bit more straightforward. So I'm going to do local function get default table. And then I'm just going to do this return level equals 1, b equals 0. Coin, is it coin? Coins equals 100. Yeah, I'm just going to do that so it's a bit more straightforward when you're reading the code in the future. So I'm just going to do new player data equals this function, and essentially it's going to call this function, and then it's just going to get this default table back. Yeah, so now we've got the data that we want, Now all that's left to do is just setting it to the value, which is pretty straightforward. All we have to do here is just go into level.value equals just the new player data variable, and then we're going to do dot. Remember, since it's a dictionary, we can just use these keys straight away. So we could do dot level, and then we can do the same thing in below. So we're going to do XP, and then we're going to do the same thing here as well. We're going to do dot coins. And now this is gonna essentially get the player's data. If there's no data, it's going to set it to a default, and then it's going to set it to the leaderboard values pretty much. So it's straightforward if you ask me. But yeah, so we're almost there now. Now all we have to do is simply save the data. So saving the data is going to be similar process to where we have to put it in a protected call, and we're going to obviously do this just in case there's an error that pops up. But aside from that, it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, so now we just have to think, how are we going to save this data? So for my example that I'm going to be showing you guys, what I'm going to be doing is one, I think which is going to be important that you should implement in all your projects, to make it so it saves the data when a player is leaving. So to do that, we're just going to simply just do this. We're going to do players. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll just do it. I'll do players.PlayerRemoving connect function, and then we're going to do those brackets, enter, and in those brackets it's just going to put in removing player. Remember, this variable and the other variable here, new player, does not have to be named that. It can be named anything you want. This is just for clarity and easy to read, basically. So this is going to be our removing player that's currently leaving the game. What we want to do is we need to get the leader stats folder, and then afterwards check their stats as well. However, when the player is leaving, we're not sure if it's even created in the first place. So what we have to do is we have to make sure it exists. So similar to how we do like if it exists check over here, we're going to do something similar. So we're going to do local leader stats, so make a new variable equals removing player. So instead of removing player, find the first child that is named leader stats. And then we're going to do a check here where if leader stats does not equal nil, then we can confirm that the leader stats actually does exist. And now we're going to have to check if level, XP, and coins exist now. So I'm doing all this just to be safe, so there's no unexpected errors that will pop up. So yeah, it's always good to be, cautious of that. So here we're just going to do another similar variable setting. So we're just going to do leader stats, and then we're going to do find first child again, and then we're just going to look for the level name, and we're just going to do essentially the same, and then I'm just going to copy paste it. Yeah, I'm just going to do XP. It's going to copy the name, but I wanted it to be lower caps. XP coins, because you should make your variables be a similar, what do you call it? I was gonna say it should be a similar convention where if it's lower caps, it should make all the variables lower caps, but my level is obviously not doing that. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put it back to how it should be. But yeah, that's just the rule that I follow and that you should follow as well. But it's nothing too bad if you don't. It's just going to mean your script will be a bit messy. But yeah, so now we've got our find first child checks for the stats. We're going to have to do a similar check where we check in, does it exist? So level, nil, and then we're just going to do that, copy and paste essentially. We're just copying the new stats. And now, this essentially right now what it's doing is it's going to check, hey, does leader stats exist inside the removing player? Well, the leaving player, I guess. And then after it checks that it does exist, it's going to check, oh, does level, XP, and the coin stat also exist in the leader stats folder? And it'll check that they all do exist. And now what we can do here is we're going to copy and we're going to just paste this, because I really can't be, like, you could be lazy, you could type it if you want, but personally, if there's something that I can just copy, I'm just going to do it anyways. It's faster that way in my opinion. Plus, it's a really similar format. However, GetAsync, we expected something to return. However, with this next method, we're gonna have to remove return because nothing gets returned anyways. But instead of GetAsync, we're gonna do something called setAsync. So you probably guessed it. setAsync is gonna set the value inside the key inside this data store, bro. Basically, I mean. So yeah, so set async, instead of new player, we're going to put in removing player.userid instead. Then we're going to do a comma, and then this is where you're going to put in your data. So we want to store in a table, so we're just going to create one right now. So we're going to do a open curly bracket, and we're going to press enter, and then actually I'll do it like this. I'm going to press enter there, and I'm going to make my curly brackets here. So now it's gonna make a data table inside the user ID, and then here, just like how we put some labels in here, we're gonna do the same here as well. So we're gonna do level equals level.value, and then we're gonna do xp equals xp.value. We're gonna do coins equals coins.value. And now we've got this part pretty much done. There's one more thing we have to change. So local success is fine. However, new player data, this shouldn't be here since it's not gonna get anything in return. So instead, when this is the case, what happens is you have to rename this to an error message. Not exactly in this like format. You can write it however you want. But what you need to know is that it's gonna return the error message if this is not successful. So yeah, so that's essentially our protected call done, so our p call. And now what we have to do now is you can just simply make it so you can write down a message if it's successful or if it's not successful. So I'm gonna just do that now. So I'm gonna do if successful print saved, and then the removing player's name data. Else if it's not successful, warn didn't save removing player's name, and then I'm just gonna add a colon here, and then I'm gonna just put in the actual error message. Yeah, so essentially now we've got a kinda a system in place. So now it can load in players' data if the players is like if the data doesn't exist, maybe because it didn't load properly, or maybe because the player is new to the game, so obviously they wouldn't have data if they're new. It'll get the default table and it'll set it to the stats in the leader stats folder, and now it's going to save the data whenever the player is leaving, and it'll print out a message as well if it saves it successfully or not. We could try this out now by pressing play. However, I do want to tell you guys that when you first try and run it, you might get an error. Let me see if it happens now. No, it doesn't. Give me a second. Yeah, so you might get an error saying, oh, enable Studio to have access into the API or something like that. That just basically is a simple fix to do. It's nothing like to do with the script. What you have to do is you have to go on your home tab, go into game settings, go into security, and then you can see here enable Studio access to API services. So mine's already enabled, but yours might look like this at first, and then what you have to do is simply just click on it, and then you just click on save, and then when you press play again, that error should disappear, and now it should be saving your data properly. So mine is I kind of already like did a video, like a practice video, so I've already got my stats saved. So let's say I wanted to make it from scratch. So what I was saying before is you can just change this to another name. So I'm just gonna do 1 instead. And then if I press play, it's just going to give me the default stats. And now, if I wanted to change the player stats, one you have to keep in mind is we can't change our stats from the client because the server won't see it. So we have to go on up here in the test tab, then click on current, so it switches to server. Then go under your player's leader stats, and then now you can change your start. So I'm going to change it to 2. And now you can see that it's changed as well. And now I'm going to leave the game, and hopefully you can see it says it saved my data. And if I press play again, it should now be saved. Well, it should now load my original level, so which was 2. So our system's pretty much almost done now. So all we have to do is one more thing, which what I would suggest doing is to have an autosave feature. So just in case, let's say your server just like gets cut off, it just dies immediately, and this doesn't actually get called, the player removing call. What you can do instead is have an autosave feature where it's you basically just make a while loop that loops every, I'd say 60 seconds in my opinion, for like a live game or project. It loops every 60 seconds, just saving the player's data essentially. For this purpose, I'm just gonna make it be a bit quicker, but yeah, honestly, it's up to you. However, the reason why we put it at 60 seconds and not at like 2 or something, or 5, is because one, if your game has multiple players, let's say you have 10, 20, 50, you have to think about the strain that your server's gonna get while trying to save all of those data. So if you do it every 2 seconds, it's gonna have to save 50 players' data like every 2 seconds. However, if you do it every 60 seconds, it does it way less frequently, so that means the server will have less strain, and that means your game will be less laggier, basically. Well, at least from the server side. So yeah, so what we're gonna do here for the autosave, we're just gonna do while wait. I'm gonna do 60 just to show you the example. While wait do, and then what we can pretty much do is just copy and paste this essentially. So we can just put this to new player instead of removing player, and then just do that. We copy and pasted it, and this is essentially just gonna work straight out the box pretty much. I'm just gonna name this autosave. Now if I press play, you can see it should say at least that it's gonna be saving my data all the time now. Hopefully. Okay. Oh, I thought it wasn't gonna work. But yeah, just to test it out, I'm just gonna change my coins from 100 to 200 now. You can see it's now ×2. So we're gonna wait till it's 3, and now it should save. Now I'm gonna press stop. If I press play again, it should hopefully get my coins on 200, and as you can see, it has saved it. So those are the two things that you should probably have in your game. So you should have your autosave feature, and you should have a player removing event that will also save your player's data. So obviously this is a bit of a mess right now. What we can do to clean it up if you want is we can simply just create a function, local function, save player data, and then we're just gonna take in the parameters for the stats. So I'm just gonna do here level, XP, and coins. And then I'm just gonna do just do this pretty much. And then yeah, so I'll copy and paste it because I pretty much can. Oh, pardon me. Just put it, you have to put in your player as well. So I'm just gonna put in my player. Then as you can see, now if we're gonna call this function, we just provide it the player, the intended level value, the XP and coins value, and it should save it, and it'll print the the warnings or success. And now what we do is we're just gonna replace everywhere where we copy this with that new function call. So we're gonna do save player, new player, and then level.value, p.value, and coins. I don't know why I can't type today. And then we're also gonna do the same here too. But we're going to change from new player to removing player, and then I'm going to remove this as well. Level, I'm going to change it to value so it's a bit less confusing. Level, and then just pretty much just change how it sets it. So we want it to set it to the value directly, so now it's going to do that. And essentially that's pretty much done now. So if we were to press play, it should save our data. Just gotta wait 5 seconds. Even that feels like an eternity. If I press stop as well, it should also save again as soon as I disconnect. This disconnect is my client leaving, by the way. Yeah, so I've disconnected, and you can see it saves the data as well. So that's our system pretty much done. Obviously, you would want to tweak this so it changes from 5 to 60 instead. You can maybe set this to a variable as well. If you want to be really clean, you could do it like local auto save duration equals 60. If you want to be clean, you can do it like that, and then just put it in here instead. And then if you ever want to change the duration, you just change it up here instead. But other than that, this is pretty much it. This is all I can show you. This is obviously it's a very simple system that I just wanted to show you. And this should give you a basis gist on how DataStore works and how GetAsync is used and setAsync is used. That's very important because when I did it, I didn't know about all this. I didn't know about having to store it in a table. Originally, I just thought for each different stat, you'd set that to its own thing. and obviously that wasn't the case. So yeah, this is definitely the most efficient way. So as in, like, you should store a table in your user ID's key. So that's how you should do it. And yeah, so obviously you should do your own research as well now that you know about how it works somewhat. You'll be able to understand what some of the forums or what people are saying now. And you can maybe look at other people's systems that they've already made, like, you know, other modules and stuff. But yeah, so I think this is pretty much it. The one other thing I had to explain was something called DataSync, but I don't think I have enough time to really explain it in this tutorial. However, I do hope you did enjoy this tutorial for now. And if you have any issues or any concerns or questions, just feel free to ask below. I'll try my best to answer it. Or if I don't answer it, maybe someone else will as well. Yeah, and if you can make a better system, you can write it down as well in the comments as well, so everyone else can learn too. But yeah, I hope you do enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. Check out the TikTok and the shorts as well, and the previous videos as well, so you can learn as much as you can. And yeah, just practice pretty much on your free time on this system pretty much. And yeah, don't have anything else to really say. So yeah, I think I'll just catch you guys in the next video.